Welcome to our Canada 150 presentation on Canadian innovations. Based on the book Ingenious by Tom Jenkins and David Johnston, our old Governor General, each student has selected a Canadian innovation and completed a short slide about it in the Pecha style, which is 20 seconds per slide. Without further ado, enjoy the Canada 150 presentation on Canadian innovations.
In 1963, a man by the name Jim Swale decided people shouldn't be confined for their loss of sight. Blind himself, he worked with a group of designers and marketers to create hundreds of inventions, such as light sensors to save power, sound beacons to locate lost objects, voice-controlled telephones for easier phone use, and a much-improved foldable cane. By doing so, Jim created an awareness for blind people's needs and improved the lives of everyone with sight loss.
Most people enjoy using snow goggles for winter activities, but let's take some time to see how they were created. The Inuit were the constructors. They had taken a piece of bone from a caribou and carved a long slit through it. The goggles were wide enough to see through, but narrow enough to block the worst, harmful, harsh, and ultraviolet rays. The Inuit also carved them to be able to fit the person's face. That's how snow goggles were invented.
The igloo, a structure that is very useful. If you find yourself in Canada's north and need to stay warm, you should build one of these. You can thank the Inuit people for this brilliant design. The only tool you will need is a long knife. To make one, you cut hard-packed snow into bricks. After the first row is placed, cut blocks to form a sloping surface. Then the rest are placed in a spiral. Make a hole on top and near the door and you are done. This can be made by 2 people in under an hour. This structure becomes stronger as more weight is applied to it, so you don't have to worry about it breaking.
Saskatchewan has always made medical advances in history, and the air ambulance was no different. Armed with only one pilot, nurse, plane, and engineer, the non-military government organization took air in 1946. The plane visited the most remote areas of the province, giving medical care to lots of people, mostly polio victims. Later, the organization had helped over 1,000 patients a year.
Did you know who invented a snowblower? The snowblower was a Canadian innovation by Arthur Sicard from St. Leonard to Port Maurice, Quebec. Arthur named it a Sicard Snow Remover snowblower, and it threw snow nearly 100 feet from the truck. Furthermore, the snowblower included a 4-wheel drive truck chassis, truck motor, snow scooper, blower, 2 adjustable chutes, and a separate motor. Lastly, everyone loved the snowblower. It saved people from wasting their time shoveling and getting tired.
Butter tarts were innovated by French female immigrants who were normally in their teen years around 1634. Yet the first found recipe appeared in 1900 in the Women's Auxiliary of Royal Victoria Hospital cookbook. The French immigrants were called the filles à marier. The filles à marier were used to making tarts back in France. Since the normal ingredients were scarce in New France, the ladies used more commonly found ingredients. These ingredients included sugar, maple syrup, butter, and raisins. What a win for our sweet tooths.
I'm sure you're familiar with the process of paper and what it's made from. But did you know that paper was invented in 1844 in Canada? That's because paper used to be rags back then. Charles Fernandy had watched wasps chew wood fibers into paper strips, and that inspired him to make paper. They used ground pulp or trees to make the paper. Even though more trees were being cut at first, over decades Canada filled with more trees. Overall, they had better newsprint with paper mills all throughout North America that had adopted the method. We now have rags to riches.
What if there was a way to control one of the most concerning and difficult diseases? Well, nowadays there is. In the summer of 1921, 3 Canadians based in Toronto University created a medicine called insulin to control sugars when your pancreas cannot. The drug brings down the sugars your body produces to keep it at a stable measure. The 3 Canadians later joined the drug firm Eli Lilly and Company to make larger quantities. This drug is now used all over the world to help people who are diabetics.
Ever watched Lord of the Rings or The Matrix Reloaded? They were one of the first movies to take advantage of 3D scanning by creating stunts that no human could possibly do. You know what's more interesting? 3D scanning was innovated in Canada. In 2004, Engineers of Canada's National Research Council made the dream of virtual reality real.
In 1900, George Eastman ended the time of bulky, inefficient cameras by inventing the Brownie. Easy to use, inexpensive, and the first camera capable of snapshots. It was named after joyful little fairy tale creatures created by Palmer Cox called brownies. Eastman thought it was a remarkable name. He was right, 150,000 sold in the first year. Brownie, a great product with the perfect name.
Elsie McGill was the first woman to ever design a plane. After World War II started in Europe, her Thunder Bay company was selected to manufacture the Hawker Hurricane for the Royal Air Force in 1939. By 1943, she had made more than 1,400 Hurricanes, and her workforce grew 5 times the size. No wonder she's Queen of the Hurricanes.
Although credit to the first light bulb is often given to Thomas Edison, the real inventors were Henry Woodward and Matthew Evans, young inventors hailing from Toronto. The bulb was made of glass, and inside there was a bit of carbon with 2 wires connected to it. The light bulb was one of the most imperative inventions of the 19th century, as it provided a brighter future for everyone and paved the way for future inventors and inventions.
Have you ever wondered how scientists travel to places with treacherous conditions, such as Antarctica? Well, they use specialized planes, of course, but we might never have been able to without Canada. Nations all around the world needed a plane that could fly and land over extreme conditions, and the world had their plane when a Canadian named Artie Hiscox created the Beaver in 1949. The Beaver had an all-metal build, so it could withstand the ludicrous weather of some areas. It was such a success, 60 countries, including the States, purchased it. Nice one, Canada.
Hey you, yeah you, the one with the car. You listen to the line on the ground, so can you tell me who drew the first one? I guess you can. Well, let me tell you that the first road line was made in 1930 by an engineer named John Miller. And then people with no instructions drove on one side like someone was telling them what to do. Now you know the story of the first road line.
Many people think that forensic pathology methods first appeared in Miami. Actually, it was first used in Saskatchewan by Dr. Frances McGill. She taught us that science is a crucial part to crime solving and keeping evidence safe. She solved many crimes, therefore getting her label as the Sherlock Holmes of Saskatchewan. Nowadays, the entire world uses her methods and insights to convict the guilty.
Imagine walking into a library and discovering all the books are written in Japanese. This is how the blind felt before Quebec inventor Roland Garneau invented computerized Braille in 1792. Computerized Braille can print more languages in over 100 words a minute. Braille is now printed faster, cheaper, and translated into more languages, and allows the visionless to have access to more in text.
BlackBerry, which was discovered in Waterloo in 1984, was co-founded by Mike Lazarus and Douglas Frame. It's one of the biggest tech companies in Canada as well as the world, with the first company to invent texting. So the iPhone, Samsung, and LG, they all are new to this game, but BlackBerry was a veteran.
We have all heard of the blue box. People all over use them. But did you know it was created right around here? In 1983, a Kitchener garbage man, Niall Ludoff, wanted to reduce waste in landfills. He created the blue box. When collected, paper and plastics are remade into new items, never hitting the landfill. The blue color stands out in all states of nature and is very resistant to the sun's harmful ultraviolet rays. With the blue box, the world can be a cleaner place.
Peter Robertson was demonstrating how to use a spring-loaded screwdriver and cut his hand. Once it healed, he came up with a square socket screw. Henry Ford recommended the use of these screws because they could build each car 2 hours faster. Also, these screws are tighter, easier, and faster to use.
Have you heard about the dessert that can be bought worldwide in Laos, Spain, Australia, and even Taiwan? It happened to be voted Canada's favorite confection. That's right, I'm talking about Nanaimo bars, the popular Canadian-made dessert found in Edith Adams' 1953 cookbook. Nanaimo bars were named after the city of Nanaimo in British Columbia. They are a simple 3-layer treat that became a tradition for small communities for places like churches. What a treat!
Chocolate bars are an easy and simple way to enjoy chocolate without the mess, but those didn't exist until one fishing trip in 1920 with Arthur Ganong and George Enser. The chocolate factory owners wanted to bring their chocolate with them without it melting in their pockets, so they wrapped it in cellophane. They decided to sell their idea at their store and called it Palomine, a wonderful Canadian innovation.
Norman Bethune was an ingenious inventor and surgeon who saved thousands of lives and devoted his own to help others. Bethune invented the blood transfusion service.
Blood was collected from donating civilians and used to replace the blood lost by soldiers in Spain and China war zones. Bethune stored the blood and brought it to soldiers at the battlefield or in camps. Norman Bethune is respected highly by the Chinese and was remembered in the Little Red Book, one of the most published of all time.
This concludes our presentation on Canadian innovations to celebrate Canada's 150th. To read more about these innovations and many more, check out the book Ingenious by Tom Jenkins and David Johnston. We hope you enjoyed this presentation and learned a bit about Canada.